something brought you here, and you felt it before you even pressed play. Not a sound, not a voice, not a sign in the sky, but a quiet pull you couldn't explain. Have you ever experienced that strange moment when everything around you seems ordinary, yet inside you sense that something unseen is trying to get your attention? Many people ignore that feeling. They scroll past it, talk over it, distract themselves from it, but you didn't. You stopped. You listened. And that alone says something unusual about you. What if the most important messages in life are not the loud ones, but the silent ones? Think about it. The world shouts constantly. Opinions, demands, expectations, noise from every direction. Yet the moments that shape us most often arrive in stillness. A realization that visits you when you're alone. A truth that settles into your mind without announcement. A realization that doesn't argue, doesn't force, doesn't rush. It simply appears and waits for you to notice. Why does that happen? Why do some people feel those moments deeply, while others never notice them at all? There is a difference between hearing and recognizing. Everyone hears sounds, but not everyone recognizes meaning. In the same way, many people live their lives surrounded by signs, lessons, and opportunities, yet they never pause long enough to ask what any of it means. But some individuals feel compelled to look closer. They question more. They reflect longer. They sense patterns where others see coincidence. Are those people just more thoughtful, or is there something about their awareness that sets them apart? Consider this carefully. Throughout history, people who changed their lives, their communities, or even their own inner world often described a moment when everything shifted. Not because the outside world changed, but because their perception did. It was as if a curtain lifted and they suddenly saw what had always been there. That kind of moment doesn't usually come with applause. It comes quietly, personally, almost privately. And when it arrives, it feels strangely specific, as though it was meant for you and no one else. Have you ever wondered why certain words, certain ideas, or certain messages seem to reach you at exactly the right time? Not earlier, not later, but precisely when you needed them. Some call it coincidence, others call it timing, some call it awareness. Regardless of the name, the experience is real. It's the sensation that something beyond your routine has intersected with your attention. It doesn't control you. It doesn't command you. It simply invites you to notice. And here is the question most people never ask themselves. If a moment feels personal, does that mean it is random, or could it mean it is relevant? We live in an age that explains almost everything with logic, yet even logic cannot fully describe why certain realizations strike the heart with such precision. Why you, at this exact moment, hearing this exact message? Why not yesterday? Why not someone else? Why now? Maybe the reason is not mysterious at all. Maybe it is about readiness. When a mind becomes ready to see, it suddenly sees what was always present. When a person becomes ready to understand, meaning appears where there once was only noise. The message didn't suddenly arrive. Your awareness did. And awareness changes everything. So pause for a second and ask yourself honestly, what if this moment is one of those moments? What if this is one of those rare points in time when your attention is not here by accident, but by alignment? Not forced, not manipulated, just naturally drawn. If that possibility is even slightly true, then what you choose to notice next might matter more than you think. Because sometimes the quietest realizations carry the strongest truths. And sometimes the simple act of paying attention is the very thing that sets a person apart. There is a reason distractions increase the closer a person gets to understanding something meaningful. Have you noticed that? The moment you begin to reflect deeply, interruptions appear. Noise grows louder. Doubt speaks more often. It is almost as if clarity attracts resistance. But why would that be? Why would the very moment you start paying attention feel like the moment everything tries to pull your attention away? Think about how rare true focus is. Most people spend their days reacting rather than reflecting. They respond to notifications, expectations, pressures, and routines without ever stepping back to ask where those paths are leading. Yet every once in a while, someone pauses long enough to see the pattern. They realize they've been moving quickly, but not intentionally. Busy, but not purposeful. Present, but not aware. And when that realization arrives, it can feel unsettling at first. Because awareness doesn't just reveal possibilities. It also reveals truth. Truth has a quiet power. It doesn't force itself on anyone, yet once seen, it cannot be unseen. That is why moments of realization often feel deeply personal. Two people can hear the same words, witness the same event, or face the same circumstance, and only one of them feels changed. Not because the message was different, but because their readiness was different. Readiness is invisible, yet it shapes everything. It determines whether a moment passes like a breeze or lands like a turning point. Ask yourself something honestly. How many times in your life have you sensed that you were being shown something important, but you brushed it aside because it didn't fit your expectations? People often expect meaning to arrive dramatically, like a sudden announcement or a clear signal, but real understanding rarely appears that way. More often, it arrives quietly, disguised as a thought that lingers longer than usual. A question that refuses to leave your mind, a feeling that something ordinary is actually significant. The people who grow the most are not always the loudest, the fastest, or the most noticed. Often they are the ones who learn to recognize these subtle moments. They begin to realize that not everything valuable demands attention. Some things invite attention. There is a difference. Demands feel urgent and external. Invitations feel calm and internal. One pushes, the other calls. And here is something worth considering. When a person begins to sense these invitations more clearly, their perspective starts to shift. Situations they once dismissed now seem meaningful. Encounters that felt random now seem timely. Even challenges begin to look different, not as obstacles placed in their ensured path, but as experiences carrying lessons. It doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy. It means life becomes understandable in a new way. You might be wondering why you, out of countless others, would feel drawn to reflect like this. That question itself is important, because curiosity is often the first sign of awakening awareness. Not awakening in a mystical sense, but in a deeply human one. The moment you genuinely question your direction, your purpose, or your understanding, you step outside autopilot, and once you step outside it, you can never fully return to moving blindly again. So consider the possibility that your attention right now is not accidental. Out of all the things you could be doing, all the places your focus could be, it is here. That doesn't have to mean something supernatural or predetermined. Sometimes it simply means that a part of you is ready to notice what it once overlooked. And if that is true, then this moment is not just another passing second. It is a doorway. The only question is whether you will walk through it or continue past it without ever seeing that it was there. There is something fascinating about doorways in life. Not physical doors made of wood or steel, but invisible ones that appear in moments of realization. Most people pass by them without noticing. They are too busy, too distracted, or too certain that what they already know is enough. But every so often, someone pauses. They feel something shift inside, a telling stillness, a subtle awareness that this moment carries more weight than the others. Have you ever felt that pause? That quiet sense that you are standing at the edge of understanding something important. Standing at that edge can feel uncomfortable. It asks you to slow down when the world tells you to hurry. It asks you to reflect when everything around you encourages reaction. And perhaps most challenging of all, it asks you to be honest with yourself, because awareness has a way of gently uncovering truths we may have overlooked. Not to shame us, not to frighten us, but to invite us to see clearly. And clarity, once it is felt, becomes something you naturally seek again. Many people think change begins with action, but often it begins with perception. The way you see determines the way you move. If you see obstacles everywhere, you hesitate. If you see possibilities, you step forward. If you see meaning in moments others ignore, you start to realize that life may be communicating in ways you once dismissed. Not through voices or commands, but through patterns, timing, and insight. The question is not whether those signals exist. The question is whether you are willing to notice them. Think about the times when something small shifted your entire perspective. A single sentence you noticed at the right moment. A brief encounter that stayed in your thoughts long after it ended. A realization that arrived quietly, yet changed how you viewed everything that followed. Those moments don't always look important from the outside. Yet inside, they feel undeniable. Why is it that such simple experiences can carry such profound impact? Perhaps because meaning is not determined by size or volume. Perhaps meaning is determined by timing and readiness. There is a quiet strength in people who learn to recognize these moments. They don't rush past reflection. They don't dismiss curiosity. They allow themselves to wonder. And wonder is powerful. It opens the mind, softens certainty, and makes room for understanding. Without wonder, everything becomes routine. With wonder, even ordinary experiences can reveal insight. That is why some individuals seem to grow continuously while others feel stuck. The difference is not luck or privilege. Often, it is attention. Attention is one of the most underestimated forces in human life. Whatever you consistently pay attention to begins to shape your thoughts. Your thoughts begin to shape your decisions. Your decisions begin to shape your direction. And your direction eventually shapes your life. It is a quiet chain reaction, almost invisible while it is happening. Yet when you look back, you can trace everything to a single point, what you chose to notice. So ask yourself something that few people dare to ask. What have you been overlooking? Not because you were careless, but because you were busy, distracted, or uncertain. What insights might already be present in your life, waiting patiently for your attention? And what might change if you allowed yourself to truly see them? Moments like this invite reflection, not pressure. They don't demand that you transform overnight. They simply ask you to consider, to observe, to notice. Because sometimes the greatest shift does not come from doing something dramatic. Sometimes it comes from seeing something clearly for the very first time. And when that clarity arrives, it can feel less like discovering something new and more like remembering something you somehow always knew. There is a quiet turning point that comes into a person's life when they finally realize that awareness is not something given to them, but something they choose. Until that moment, life can feel like a series of random events, scattered experiences, and unanswered questions. But once that realization settles in, everything begins to look different. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Have you ever noticed how a single shift in understanding can make familiar things reveal completely new meaning? Many people spend years searching for clarity, as if it were hidden somewhere far away, when in reality it often waits in the simplest observations. A pattern in your own behavior, a lesson repeated through different situations, a quiet intuition that keeps returning no matter how many times you ignore it. These are not dramatic signs. They are subtle invitations, and invitations require a response. They don't force you. They don't chase you. They simply remain patient and steady until you decide whether to accept or walk away. What makes these moments powerful is not the event itself, but your willingness to recognize it. Two people can stand in the same place at the same time and live completely different experiences. One notices nothing unusual. The other senses meaning woven into the moment. The difference is not circumstance, it is perception. And perception is shaped by attention, openness, and sincerity with oneself. When those qualities come together, even ordinary moments can feel purposeful. You might wonder why some people reach this point of awareness while others never seem to. It is not about intelligence or status. It is not about background or environment. Often, it comes down to one simple trait, the courage to pause. Pausing sounds small, almost insignificant, yet it is one of the rarest actions in a restless world. To pause means to step outside the constant rush of reaction and give yourself permission to truly observe, and observation is where understanding begins. When you observe carefully, you start to see connections. You notice how certain choices lead to certain outcomes. You see how your focus influences your feelings and how your feelings influence your direction. Gradually, life stops feeling random and starts feeling responsive. Not controlled, not predictable, but responsive, as if your awareness is participating in shaping your experience. That realization can be both empowering and humbling at the same time. Consider this question sincerely. What if moments like ensure are not interruptions, but invitations to wake up to your own awareness? Not awakening in a mystical or exaggerated sense, but in the grounded, human sense of becoming more conscious of how you live, think, and choose. That kind of awareness does not remove challenges. It changes how you meet them. It does not erase uncertainty. It strengthens your ability to face it calmly. There is a reason these reflections feel personal when they reach you. Insight often arrives quietly, almost privately, because its purpose is not to impress the world. Its purpose is to reach you. And when it does, it leaves a question behind, one that only tells the truth. When answered honestly, will you notice, or will you return to distraction? Right now, in this exact moment, you are aware. You are listening. You are considering. That alone sets this moment apart from countless others that passed unnoticed. And perhaps that is the real message hidden within it. Not that something extraordinary has suddenly appeared, but that you are capable of seeing meaning when you choose to look for it. Sometimes the most powerful realization is simply this: the awareness you have been waiting for has been quietly waiting for you. There is a moment that comes after realization, after reflection, after the quiet awareness settles in, when a deeper question rises within you. It is not loud. It does not rush. It simply asks what you will do now that you see more clearly. Because seeing is only the beginning. Understanding is only the doorway. What truly shapes a life is what happens next. Many people reach insight, feel its warmth, and then slowly drift back into old patterns as if nothing happened. Not because they are weak, but because comfort is familiar and familiarity is persuasive. Yet there are others who cannot return to who they were, because once they have seen with clarity, they cannot pretend blindness again. Have you ever noticed how awareness changes your relationship with time? Moments that once slipped by unnoticed begin to feel valuable. Conversations become more meaningful. Silence becomes more peaceful instead of empty. Even challenges begin to carry a strange kind of purpose, as if they are no longer random interruptions, but parts of a larger process shaping your understanding. When you reach that point, do not multitask. Life stops feeling like something that happens to you and starts feeling like something you are consciously participating in. This is where many people hesitate. Awareness brings responsibility, and responsibility can feel heavy if you are not used to carrying it. It asks you to choose your direction instead of drifting. It asks you to question your habits instead of repeating them. It asks you to listen inwardly instead of only reacting outwardly. And that can feel unfamiliar at first. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. Often it means growth. After all, every meaningful change you have ever experienced once felt unfamiliar before it became natural. Think about how a person transforms over time. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually. A new thought leads to a new choice. A new choice leads to a new pattern. A new pattern leads to a new path. From the outside, it may look like nothing significant is happening, yet inside, everything is shifting. This is how real change works, quietly, steadily, almost invisibly. And the only person who truly notices it as it unfolds is the one experiencing it. So consider this carefully. If you have reached a point where you can recognize these moments of clarity, then you have already stepped into rare territory. Most people spend their lives waiting for certainty before they act, waiting for guarantees before they move, waiting for proof before they trust their own perception. But awareness does not usually come with guarantees. It comes with possibility, and possibility is powerful because it invites you to step forward even when you cannot see the entire path. Right now, you stand in a space that many overlook, a space between who you were and who you could become. It is not a dramatic place. It does not announce itself. Yet it is one of the most important places a person can stand, because it is the space where choice lives, not the kind of choice shaped by pressure or expectation, but the quiet choice shaped by understanding. The decision to pay attention, the decision to stay aware, the decision to continue seeking meaning instead of settling for distraction. And here is the truth that often goes unspoken. The moments that feel small while you are living them are often the ones that shape you the most. A thought you decide to follow, a realization you decide to honor, a perspective you decide to keep. These are the turning points that rarely make noise but always leave impact. They are the seeds of direction, planted quietly in the mind, growing slowly into clarity. So as this moment unfolds, ask yourself one final question and answer it with complete honesty. Now that you see more than you saw before, will you carry this awareness forward, or will you set it down and walk away? Because the path ahead does not begin somewhere far in the distance. It begins exactly where you are. At the precise moment you decide that what you have noticed truly matters.